to, or as they are able to. Thank you two for coming today. I am excited to talk to you. Let's see, we have another guest. I'm excited to talk to you about graduate school and a lot of different aspects of what that can look like. This presentation is kind of a basic overview of all things about graduate school, how to apply, what graduate school might be right for you, if graduate school is right for you. So we're going to cover a lot of topics in a lot of breadth, but not necessarily a lot of depth. For some of you, this may be all that you need. For others, or a lot of you, you may want to talk individually about what you're looking to study and what you're looking for in graduate school, and that's perfectly fine. But this is going to introduce you to a lot of the things that you will want to know if you're interested in graduate school. I'm pretty casual, so if you do have a question while we're going, feel free to use the raise hand feature or go ahead and interrupt me. I don't mind answering questions in the middle, but I also will leave space at the end for questions. All right. So the first thing to look at is understanding what graduate school is. It's a focused advanced study in an academic discipline or a profession. It's a rigorous continued education and or professional training. And the reason why I say profession or professional training is because graduate schools are sometimes known as professional schools, such as law school, medical school, dental school, physical therapy school. A lot of them are healthcare related, but some of them are not. Masters of Business Administration, the MBA, is professional school, but also a graduate degree. So those two can be intertwined. So that kind of leads into the different types of graduate degrees. The first level beyond the bachelor's is the master's degree. There are kind of two types or two or three types of master's degrees. Usually they take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to complete. You have your master's degrees that are more of a professional master's degree, which includes some of the ones I mentioned, as well as things like, licensed marriage and family therapist, or a nutritionist, a nurse practitioner. Those are the kind of professional master's degrees. Others, you may have a master's in a humanities discipline, like a master's in social work, which also, lines up with a profession as well. You might get a master's in anthropology or uh, public health, which is another professional one as well. But you might also get a master's in chemistry or computer science. And in both those, the humanities, the sciences, anything non professionally related, you will have either what's called a master's thesis or a master's non thesis. And that's basically whether or not you're going to do research. A master's thesis means you will do a research project in graduate school and will write up a research paper known as the thesis. And a non-thesis means that you are going to be going to graduate school and all of your studies will be course dependent, but you won't necessarily be conducting research or writing that big research paper. Differences between the two and why they matter really depends on what you're studying and what you want to do with it. So if you have questions, if anyone has questions about that and specifically, we can talk about that, or you can talk to me after, whatever works. The next level above a master's degree is a PhD or a doctoral degree. It's technically a doctorate in philosophy. You can also get a doctorate in medicine, a medical doctorate, or a doctor of pharmacy. There's a few other doctoral degrees, but generally what you'll get if you're not getting that specified professional doctorate is going to be a PhD in whatever discipline. The PhD, unlike the master's, takes about 5 to 7 years to complete. And the reason why there's that big gap is because the PhD is definitely going to have research involved, at least as the structure of graduate school is now. The PhD, you'll take a couple years of coursework, just like you would with graduate school or with a master's, and then you'll spend several years. Some people finish it in 1 year, some people finish it in three, and so 5 to 7, conducting your research, writing that research dissertation in order to complete your doctoral degree. You can go directly into a PhD program after undergrad, or you can go directly into a master's program, or you can go into a master's en route to PhD, where you would earn one and then continue and sort of incorporate your master's thesis and your master's coursework into a PhD. It's kind of the graduate school version of some of the 4+1 programs we have here on campus. And you can also go get your master's and do something else for 10, 20 years and come back and get your PhD. So there's no rhyme or reason as to like when you should go to graduate school or what order you should do these things in. You can have a PhD in multiple fields if you want. It'd be a ton of work, but you could. So sometimes you'll get a specialized degree or certification. These kind of line up with the professional degrees I was talking about most of the time. If you get a master's in engineering, you may get some sort of certificate in specific areas of engineering, or you might get a specialized degree. For example, if you're getting a master's degree in special education, you would also certification is also going to be important for a lot of those professional degrees. For example, if you want to do accounting after your MBA, you might need to be a CPA, a certified professional accountant. If you want to do mental health counseling, you would want to be a licensed professional counselor. So your degree programs are preparing you to earn your master's degree or your PhD, but they're also ideally preparing you to pass any certification tests required for that profession. Any questions so far? All right, cool. So when you're thinking about graduate school, you should be sort of asking should you go to graduate school? Don't automatically assume, because it's something you really should take seriously when you're considering whether or not to go to graduate school. It's a huge commitment. And then if you decide, yes, I do want to go to graduate school, then you got to decide where to go. And that's also a big hurdle to get through. So let's break that down. Whether or not you should go to graduate school, it's some things to think about are that it will set you apart. A lot of time in the past, perhaps getting a bachelor's degree is what give you a step up in a career field. Now that that's more common, sometimes getting your master's degree is going to be what sets you apart, or getting your doctoral degree in certain fields will set you apart. And sometimes that can take place of years. It can take the place of years of experience. Have any of you looked at any job applications where they said that you have to have 5 years of experience in this or equivalent years in education? You might see that a lot, in which case getting a master's degree would mean you can kind of jump ahead a few years in terms of whether or not you have the experience. Most often, you're going to see an increase in your earning potential and the different kinds of career options available to you. You'll be able to specialize in a specific area. Your bachelor's degree, you may have majored in biology, for example, but if you go on to graduate school, you're not just going to study general biology, you're going to specialize in a specific area within biology. And that's true for all areas, not just the sciences. And the benefits of your degree also depends a lot on the career field or area of study you're going into. Some degrees, some professions, you need the master's degree to even get started. Social work, counseling, nutrition. Let's see, what's another one? Those are some key ones where you're going to need to go to graduate school to even get started. For others, I have talked about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I'm going to actually follow that link and then share that with you all. Okay, so when you search, you can just search Bureau of Labor Statistics, and if you select Occupational Outlook Handbook, it's a very, very useful tool to seeing what it would look like in the profession you're interested in. And this isn't just for graduate school, this is jobs in general. So let's look at counselor. If you want to do mental health counseling, you're not a school career counselor. So you want to do mental health counselors and marriage and family therapists. When you open that or any career, what you get is a lot of useful information. Automatically, you see what the median pay is for the past year. The typical entry-level education, master's degree, like I said, it's just dependent on that. The number of jobs that there were in 2019, as well as the job outlook. This is really important. So it's 22%, which means it's growing much faster than average. So there's going to be more and more jobs. That can be really good. If you see that that's really low, and then getting a job in your profession is important to you in your master's degree, you might end up reconsidering. Or you might continue to get that master's degree, especially if you are being funded through a fellowship or a scholarship and it's something you're passionate about. And that's totally okay. You don't have to go to graduate school just to get a job, but you should be aware of why you're going to graduate school, regardless of what that reason is and if it's worth it for you. Okay. And we'll go back to our slideshow. And so the benefits of a PhD, we talked about at the master's. A PhD allows you to do research or have research or advanced development positions in whatever industry or field you're looking in, or in government positions or in academia. So touching on academia, it is very difficult now to become a professor, to become a faculty member, because faculty are retiring later and later. The structure of tenure and faculty positions is changing. So, it used to be if you go to get a PhD, that means you want to be a college professor. That still may be the case, but there's so much more you can do with a PhD that isn't just teaching in the university. So, don't limit yourself to that, and just sort of, be willing to explore the different opportunities. One other note I'll make on that, and this relates to what I said in terms of PhD being mostly research focused, is that, you know, graduate school has been sort of shifting, going through a growth period for a little while now, and it's kind of been accelerated by the coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. And what that means is that some places are starting to reconsider the traditional structure of a PhD program with the coursework and then the research that has to be very academic. And they're looking at maybe restructuring it so that it develops more of those soft skills that are important in different professions. This isn't anything concrete. It's just something that you might be interested in and want to be aware of as you're looking for graduate programs, because if you're not necessarily going to get a PhD to be a professor, you might be interested in PhD programs that have more hands-on experience, more what's it called? Quality based rather than research based experiences, practical experiences, and they do exist. So don't be, take the time to look for those, because those do exist and they're becoming more and more common. So I mentioned you're qualified to teach at the university level. There is an increase in earning potential a little bit. Usually it's a little bit higher than the master's degree. Generally what happens is that your jump from bachelor's degree to master's degree earning potential is going to be the biggest jump. And then the master's degree to PhD earning potential, the PhD is higher, but that gap between master's and PhD is a little bit lower. Again, that depends on the career field, but generally speaking, that's what you're looking at. And another benefit is specialization. Specialization can help you delve deep into an area that you're interested in and into that career area, and it can give you valuable skills at an extensive level that others would not have. So should you go to graduate school? You're going to want to know, what are your motivations? What do you want to achieve? So is it that you want to join a certain profession? Is it that you want to expand your knowledge and in an area that you're interested in or passionate in? Is it a bit of both? Is it something else? Figure out what your why is, because you're going to need that to motivate you through graduate school. And then you say, will graduate school help you achieve this? So let's say you want to become a journalist. You don't need a master's degree to become a journalist, but in the field of journalism, it's becoming a lot more common for entry-level journalists to have their master's degrees. So it might help you to become a better journalist, or to be given more opportunities as a journalist to have your graduate degree. That's one way you might answer that question. And lastly, talk with your professors, talk with your mentors. If you've done research or internships, talk to those supervisors, talk to your friends, people who know you well, and talk about what you're thinking about in terms of graduate school, what you want it to do, and use them as a sounding board. Get some feedback, from the people you trust, and use that to help you decide if that's what you want to do. So there are some not great reasons to go to graduate school. There's a million reasons why you might want to go. A couple reasons that should not be on the list. Not knowing what you want to do. So I already talked about how graduate school is about specialization. It's about narrowing your focus. If you don't know what you want to do, graduate school is not going to help you find that out. You're going to need to already be honing in on that and looking to, narrow it down. And maybe you're not ready to get a job. Graduate school is harder than a job. I mean, in most cases, graduate school is harder than having a job. And what's more is, if you are going to graduate school to avoid the job market and you're not really passionate about what you're studying, you're not using it to get to a career, you'll find yourself in the same situation just maybe 2 or 5 years later, looking for a job, not really wanting to apply, and maybe even not knowing what you want to do. So if that's where you're at, there are other resources you can talk to. I'm willing to talk to you about it. You can talk to the Center for Career and Professional Development. Their counselors are great at talking about this and helping you figure out some things you can try to figure out what you want to do, or how to get a job without making it a terrible experience, rather than just going to graduate school as sort of a backup. When you start looking at graduate schools, you've passed all the first few questions, where should you go to graduate school, will it help you, etc. You're gonna have to figure out where you wanna go. When you're looking at undergraduate schools, maybe you were looking at places that were close, like how many students they had, did they have a sports team, did they have your major, maybe you looked at who sent you information in the mail or who your guidance counselors told you to apply to, or reputation. Some of that matters, but a lot of it is more specific when you go to graduate school, and you kind of have to figure out what you want in a graduate school more or less on your own with some guidance, but you have to seek out that guidance. So you want to make sure, of course, that it has your area of study. You want to look at what kind of curriculum they have. Is it coursework, practicum or experience-based, research-based? And you want that to align with your goals. And this kind of touches again on what I said about some more PhD programs establishing hands-on and practical experiences rather than an academic research paper like the dissertation. If you want to study something specific in a course area, like very specific, and you know what it is you want to research or what you want to learn more about, then when you look at a program, don't just look at how good their program is, how high their rating is. Look at who their faculty are right now and what kind of things those faculty are studying. Because when you go to graduate school, you're not so much going to be in a major as you are going to be using, picking a faculty to guide you in a new area. So if there are no faculty there researching things you're interested in or studying things you're interested in, that's not the place for you. You need to have someone there who's going to be able to guide you. You'll want to check out their admission requirements, make sure you meet those. If you have questions about like the GPA, that's the average GPA they admit students with, or the average test scores, you can ask that department. Please do not be afraid to ask. They get those questions all the time, and it's good information to have, and they don't judge you for asking. It can just help you realize, what schools are within your range, what are kind of your dream schools, so that you can have a realistic expectation going into applications. There's a lot of things to consider, so I'm going to skim through some of these. Reputation, but I'm not just talking about the ranking on US News and World Report. I'm talking about where did their graduates go? What are they doing now in their career field? If it's research-based, have they been published in research journals? Are they currently working in an industry that you're interested in? Look at what their graduates have done, what their faculty have done, and that's how you'll know their reputation. Are they accredited? This is especially true for certain professions. So there's an accrediting body for example, being a nutritionist or a dietitian. They have an accrediting body for their graduate schools. So you'll want to go to a graduate school that includes that accreditation or has that accreditation. You might care about your location. I usually encourage people to widen your scope for graduate school, look far and wide, even abroad. But if you are tied to a specific area or you really want to visit there because it's related to where you want to study or what you want to study, then that can be something that limits down where you want to go to graduate school, what programs. The time to degree, this varies some depending on your degree that you're looking for. Like if you're looking for an MBA, there are some that are 18 months, some that are 24, some that are 12. That might matter to you. Diversity is always important. You don't want to go to somewhere that's sort of like monotone when you're studying something so in depth, because you want the more perspectives, the better. So you want that diversity for those reasons and millions of others. You may want to look at their cohort size or the program size. So you're looking at faculty to student ratio. You may want a low ratio, so maybe it's like 5 students to a faculty member, so you'll get that one-on-one attention, which you really need in graduate school a lot of the times. Maybe you don't want that one-on-one attention, it'll make you nervous. You want a little bit more space, so maybe you want a bigger graduate program where there's maybe 20 to 30 students per faculty member. Look at their facilities. Do they have good labs? Do they have graduate student housing? Do they have good academic buildings? Is it a place you're going to be comfortable and be able to conduct your research or your study? And talk to current graduate students. You can find out who they are through the same contacts you would find out what the average admitted GPA are. And you're not going to go through the university admissions, because generally university admissions knows more about undergraduate admissions. Instead, you want to go to the specific department you're applying to, and in their Contact Us section, look for someone who's titled as the graduate program coordinator or graduate student admissions for that department or student services for that department. that person's going to be able to answer all those questions for your application. And you can ask them if there are any current graduate students you could talk to about their experience, and they'll probably have a list ready for you. And you can ask them all the questions you want to ask that aren't just like, can I get into the school? How many classes do I take? But like, what's it like being a grad student there? Are there good places to live off campus? Is there good transportation? Anything that matters to you. I would almost say don't apply without either being able to talk to a graduate student or visit. And last one on things to consider, I know there's so much, funding opportunities. Not only is graduate school a time commitment and an energy commitment in terms of how much you'll be studying, researching, and putting into it, but it's also a monetary commitment. So you may want to look for some funding. There are both internal and external sources of funding. Internal means it'll come from the department or the school you're applying to, and external means it comes from another company or organization and you apply to it outside of your application to that program. A brief overview of the different types of funding. Graduate assistantships is probably the best kind of funding, but it's not available in all degree programs. It's more common to get an assistantship as a PhD student or as a master's thesis student, and it's very rare to get an assistantship as a master's student who's in a professional degree program, like an MBA, like a nutritionist, like a physical therapist. What an assistantship gives you is essentially part-time employment with the university. It also gives you either a partial or full tuition waiver, and generally it comes with a stipend as well. So that's pretty much gold in terms of graduate school funding. Other options are fellowships or grants. These can be available from the department. You can ask about them and if they consider you automatically when you apply, or if you have to apply separately. And again, these can be from external companies or organizations. Same with scholarships. Make sure, so one thing I'll say is you do need to still fill out the FAFSA when you're applying to graduate school. You're not going to get things like the Pell Grant or a lot of the other aid that's available for undergrad, but you will have that to demonstrate your financial need when you go to apply for fellowships, grants, or scholarships, or when they consider you for the ones they have in their department, especially if they're need-based. You can also get government-funded student loans if that's the route you need to take, which may be the case for certain professional degrees. Like I said, that one's an investment. So the idea is you'll be earning more, so you'll get a bigger return on that investment in your education. And lastly, employer funding. A lot of people don't consider this one or don't think about it, especially if you're thinking like, I gotta finish undergrad and go straight into graduate school. Employers you can get a job that will help you pay for graduate school. For example, if you were a tutor or an RA or involved in some other way with the university while you're an undergrad, maybe you want to work at a university for a while. Maybe you want to work in admissions. Maybe you want to work for the tutoring program as like the coordinator of tutoring or something. If you work for a lot of universities that you work for will give you a tuition benefit as part of your employee benefits. That's actually how I got my master's degree. As part of a benefit at another institution I was at, our tuition was waived, so I was able to go to graduate school part-time and earn my master's degree. It took me a little longer, about 2.5 years instead of 2, but it was free. And other employers that might fund your graduate school, corporations, especially in business areas, marketing, some human resources. A lot of businesses will do this. It's something you can look for when you're applying for jobs. See if they include tuition benefits. And government institutions often have tuition benefits as well. So, and this is especially important if the field you're going into not only benefits from a graduate degree, but also years on the job, because then you've got a good job, you're getting that experience, you're getting graduate school funded or at least partially funded. And on top of that, when you're done with graduate school, you might already have a job guaranteed with the place who funded it. So that's something to consider if you want to take some of the non-traditional routes to graduate school, that there's really no traditional route to graduate school. Which comes to when should you go to graduate school? A lot of times people follow the track of, elementary, middle, high, and then high school, and then you go to college. And then a lot of people expect after college you go straight to graduate school. That does not have to be the case. It can be, but it doesn't have to be the case. And there are plenty of good reasons to have a gap between when you finish your undergraduate degree and when you go to graduate school. Some of those are to clarify what you do and don't want. Like I said, you don't want to go to graduate school when you don't know what you want to do. Maybe you want to earn some money and save up for graduate school so that you're more comfortable and feel a little bit more secure when you are paying for graduate school or when you go to graduate school. Maybe you're burnt out of academics. Maybe you're just tired of tests and papers and you just don't think you can do it, and the summer won't be enough of a break. Definitely take some time off then before you go to graduate school. It's a difficult time. It's a lot harder than undergrad in a lot of ways, or at least very different. So you don't want to go into it already feeling sort of academically burnt out. It's a good reason to take some time off, and no harm done either. You're not going to be less likely to get in to graduate school if you wait a few years or even 10 years. That's not what it's about. So don't be afraid of those gap years. Then you want to make sure that you really do want to tackle graduate school, that you're motivated, you're dedicated. And like I said, you may want to take some years off to take advantage of employer benefits. So when you're applying to graduate school, it's never too early or too late to start thinking about it. You can go at any time. If you are interested in applying and going to graduate school right after undergrad, then you're going to want to start thinking about it more seriously in your junior year. If you want to wait a year off or a couple years off, we can still talk about it your junior or senior year. But I also work with alumni, so I can help you work through the application process even 5 years down the road when you're ready to go to graduate school. Again, talk it over with those you're close to and meet with an advisor. So I do individual appointments as well where we can talk about where you are in your process, whether you're just thinking about it, exploring your options, or trying to fill out the application. I'm happy to meet with you at any of those stages and work with you to get to the next step. We talked a little bit about the admissions requirements. You'll want an average GPA. Usually for graduate schools, you want at least a 3.2. Some graduate schools will take a 3.0, but the more competitive applicants are going to have 3.4 and above, sometimes 3.6, depending on the field. Some graduate programs will require some sort of standardized test score, such as the GRE, which is the Graduate Record of Examination, or for business areas, the GMAT, law schools, the LSAT, med schools, the MCAT. You'll know which one you need based on what the application requirements list. You may be able to apply to some graduate schools without having to take the GRE or the GMAT. That's becoming a trend now as well, which has been spurred on again by COVID, making it hard to get people in a testing center. Some places have just gone online though, so the tests may still be required. They're also going to measure you on holistic measures. What they're going to look at is your personal statement. So you have your GPA. By the time you get here, you already have your GPA pretty much set. Once you take that test, your score is set. But this personal statement, you have complete control over in that application process. This is going to be an essay where you talk about yourself both professionally and personally. So you want to, state what your goals are, why you're a competitive applicant, but you also want to talk about what you're passionate about, why you want to study this, let your personality through. Because in the end, they don't want to admit a GPA or a test score. They want to admit a person. And so the personal statement can make or break you in an application. And of course, they'll look at your extracurriculars, any work experience or other experience, and finally, the letters of recommendation. Most places you're going to want about 3 letters of recommendation. I encourage you to have at least one come from faculty and at least one of those be faculty in your area of study. And others can be internship supervisors, research supervisors, work supervisors, but usually I'd say one, at least maybe even 2 come from faculty. So if you don't have any close relationships with faculty now, it'd be a good idea to start going to those office hours, getting to know them a little bit. That's one of the benefits of being at a smaller school like Mercer, is that you have the ability to get to know your professors one-on-one. So take advantage of that. If not only because they're great, but also because you get letters of recommendation down the road. The application requirements are pretty standard. You're going to fill out some sort of online application form, which is usually pretty basic. Most places will have an application fee. There are some ways to bypass this fee sometimes. If you are in financial need, you can usually call the program and let them know you have financial difficulties, but you're interested in applying, and ask if they have any sort of discount or waiver. And you'd be surprised how readily they kind of pass those out. I know a lot of students who just asked. They didn't even say they weren't financial need, but asked if there was a discount or a waiver, and were able to apply, with half the application fee or free. So don't be afraid to ask. The worst they say is no, so long as you're polite and uh, not rude. It's not going to hurt to ask. You'll also need your transcripts. These are your Mercer transcripts, but also if you took dual enrollment classes or summer classes at any other institution, you'll need your transcripts from those places as well. I already mentioned the letters of recommendation, standardized tests, personal statement, and then sometimes there are specific program requirements. So for example, a physician's assistant, they need 1,000 hours of patient contact experience before they can even apply to PA school. So there are similar requirements for med school and other healthcare administrations. Some places will require you to have conducted research, or even in some cases, like a lot of MBA programs, they'll require you to have had at least a year or two of experience in the field. So make sure you go through the requirements at each program that you're looking at and see that you meet those requirements. So just to give you a general timeline, and again, this is based on if you want to go to graduate school right after undergrad. You don't have to, and you can kind of shift this uh, based on whenever you want to apply to graduate school. If you're not sure how to shift it for what you want to do, let me know, and we can create a timeline for you personally. But generally, before your junior year, just explore your interests, get to know yourself, what you like, what you don't like, what areas of study you like, etc. And then in May of your junior year, it's time to start thinking about what programs you might be interested in, if they require any of these standardized tests, and if they do, you want to start looking at signing up and preparing for those tests, and that'll go through the summer of after your junior year. And then you'll want to take those tests probably in August of your senior year. Some people choose to take it later because they want more study time and they feel confident that they'll do well on the first time. I usually recommend August just in case you don't do as well on the first time as you would have liked, so that you have more time to study again and retake the test before the applications are due. So this isn't a hard and fast rule of when to take it, it's just a general recommendation. And then September through November is when you're going to be getting those application materials ready. So that's your fall of your senior years at graduate school applications. That can be a lot when you're trying to like finish out undergrad strongly and do well. And that's could be a reason why you wait a year for graduate school, because you don't want to go through that process of applying while you're still in school. So you're going to research funding while you're researching for schools. What you do for the application to graduate school, those things I mentioned, that's almost identical to a lot of fellowships and scholarship application requirements. So apply for them all at the same time and look for those fellowships and funding, because even if you get an assistantship or even if you get a fellowship through this program you're applying to, it never hurts to have more funding, especially when that funding, and a lot of this funding does provide not just tuition, but room and board support. So that means your living expenses. More money does not hurt. Most applications are going to start being due in early to mid-December, some as late as January, rarely February, and most of the times you're going to get your decisions around March, sometimes earlier. But there's a generally accepted rule, a soft rule, where graduate programs give you your results or your acceptance or non-acceptance by March 15th. And then you have until April 15th to decide which school you want to go to before they withdraw any funding offers they've given you. So they kind of give you that sort of professional courtesy of like a waiting period where you can think it over, wait for more admissions letters, and decide what you want. I note here that you might want to consider deferring your acceptance. So let's say you applied to graduate school, you're planning to go right afterwards, and then something like COVID happens, or the senior year just beats you up and you just realize you can't go into graduate school right away. You're not stuck necessarily. A lot of graduate programs will allow you to defer your acceptance up to a year, which means you would still be accepted. And usually they'll keep your funding offer as well, and you'll just start a year later. So it's one of those things where the worst they can say is no. It does not hurt to ask. I know that this does exist in a lot of graduate programs. So don't feel stuck if you've applied and now you're not sure that you want to go right away. So you're here in undergrad, you know that you're going to have to apply, you're going to go to graduate school. So how do you prepare to make yourself both successful in graduate school and a competitive applicant to get there? A lot of what you do to prepare for graduate school is the same things we tell you to do to prepare for life, to prepare for a career, to prepare for internships. Everything you do counts, right? So you want to explore your interests, learn more about yourself, figure out what areas you like to study and what you don't like to study. Try to earn and maintain a strong GPA. Build relationships with faculty. Even if you're not going to graduate school, they can still be references for you in job applications. You should be doing that regardless, because why else come to a small school if not to get that one-on-one attention? Take on active roles or leadership positions in your clubs and organizations. So your involvement is definitely going to be a quality over quantity. It's great if you're in 10 or 15 clubs, but if you're not truly active in any of them, it's not that valuable. But if you are a president in one club, a treasurer in another, and your sorority, maybe you organize an event every year, and that's all you do, that's great because you're taking on an active leadership role in each of those groups. So quality over quantity. And some, consider doing research, internships, fellowship opportunities for undergrad. We have an Office of Fellowships and Scholarships headed by Dr. David Davis and Dr. Cameron Kunzelman. And they can give you fellowships for like summer experiences, either abroad or in the US, or for entire academic years or semesters, or for gap years after undergrad but before graduate school, or even just after undergrad with no intentions for graduate school. So go to that office if you're at all interested in having a unique experience and see, they'll help you see what's out there and if there's something that you would like to do. And so, also work experience is valuable. Sometimes we may have to fund our own way through graduate school. We're supporting ourselves. So, work experience is still really valuable. Even if you're customer service at Chick-fil-A, you're getting a lot of valuable teamwork skills, patience, organization, ability to keep up with a high pace. There are a lot of skills you gain from there that are valuable. And managing work with your studies is incredibly valuable and looks really good on an application. So if you do have to work a lot in undergrad, don't have time for a lot of these other things, don't fret. You're okay. We can just talk about the ways to, really market and talk about your job experiences so that you get the best out of what you've done. So succeeding in graduate school is going to look a little different than when you're in undergrad. The curriculum is more focused, and so you're not going to be taking general education courses. Here you might be taking your science requirement for your humanities major, or you're taking your math requirement or your art requirement. There's not going to be any more of that. You're going to be taking all major courses basically all the time, and they're going to be more and more focused. You're going to be expected to be more independent and to take more initiative. A lot of times you're going to get 1 or 2 grades in your graduate courses, and that's going to be maybe a couple tests, or maybe you have one big project the whole time and you sort of have to guide yourself through it and make sure you're working on it little by little, rather than getting maybe a grade on your introduction or a grade on your literature review. You have to do it all one at a time. And you want to take initiative to get feedback along the way if you need that feedback, because it's there for you, but you have to be able to go and ask your faculty member or your advisor, hey, I'm working on this project, could you give me some feedback on what I've done so far? Which leads to also developing closer working relationships with faculty. Once you get to graduate school, you're basically almost a peer of these faculty members. So they're not just training you to learn more, do well in their class, but they want you to do well because you are going to be working alongside them in that field. You're going to be representing their school, their teachings, and they want you to do well because of that, and because they hopefully like you. So those relationships are going to be really strong. Then don't underestimate that. And another reason to get close to faculty on Mercer, get to know them, because it'll be good practice for when it's even more important in graduate school. The grading is different. I already mentioned that you're going to get fewer grades overall, but you also don't get D's in graduate school. It's A, B, C, or an F. There's not that like hovering D where it's not quite failure, but not quite success. So that letter is gone entirely. And usually getting a B in graduate school is bad. You usually want to get A's with maybe a rare B. In fact, at my graduate school, if you got to be in a course, you had to have a meeting with the dean to make sure you were on track. And that's scary, right? That can be really scary. So the grading is just different and probably something you have to get used to. There are smaller cohorts. That might not always be true since you are a smaller undergrad, but it is possible to go to a graduate program where all of your classes have 3 students in them, and there always is like there's only like 5 total students. That's possible. That could happen. Um, the seasonal breaks, your spring breaks, your fall breaks, your summer breaks, usually you're going to be using that time to keep up your graduate work, whether it's keeping up with classes or if you have an assistantship, grading papers, if you're doing research over the summer, or if you're in a professional master's degree program, you might have internships over the summer, or you might have practicum hours that are required that you do throughout the year in those breaks. So it's less of a sort of getaway time than it is in undergrad. And even in undergrad, you sometimes take papers or you have tests coming back when you come back, but it's more pronounced in graduate school. All this to say, graduate school is very difficult, which is why I want you to know why you're going there so it can motivate you and keep you going. And ultimately, graduate school is very rewarding if you're there for the right reasons. So it's scary, it's hard, but it's going to be worth it if it's what you want and are passionate about, and it's worth sticking through. And when you're there, seek out resources when you need them and prioritize your well-being. Depression and anxiety rates skyrocket with graduate students. And when you're not well mentally, you're not well physically, and you're certainly not well academically. Um, and there are resources available for you in graduate school. You still have access to CAPS on most campuses. There's still, academic support. There's student life. Sometimes these are just less obvious. With undergrad, they're kind of pushed right at you, pushed in your face. Look at all these resources. In graduate school, again, you're expected to be an independent and take initiative. So you might have to go out and look for the resources you need, but they are there. So make sure you look for them and take advantage when you need them, or before you need them even. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. My email is there. I can do individual appointments on Zoom right now, and I can help you with deciding, looking at programs, figuring out how to find funding, or if you're in the application process, I can help you through that. And especially one of my favorite things to do is helping write and review personal statements. So if you're at that juncture, please set up a meeting with me, or you can even just email me your personal statement and I'll read it. I'll give you feedback